Jenna DeAngelis joins us live from Washington Square Park, where thousands of people have gathered. Jenna.
Jessica, the crowd dispersed a bit, but you can still see a group of people behind me. Those we spoke to described anger, frustration, and motivation to push back. They started gathering around 5 o'clock tonight, and that rally quickly grew. Take a look at video from Chopper 2. It shows the massive crowd taking over Washington Square Park. Many started at a rally in Union Square and marched through the streets chanting. The event was started by those against the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, including organizations like Radical Women and Rise Up for abortion rights. We spoke to many New Yorkers who were compelled to come out here, saying they couldn't stay silent.
We're the future, and we need to take care of it and make sure that it's going in the right direction.
It's a slippery slope because the same ruling that they used for Roe is going to be used against LGBT, interracial marriage, a whole host of stuff. And it's just like we're going back in time 50 years to when we're supposed to be moving forward.
We'll dive into more of that on the news at 11. In the meantime, the rally remained mostly peaceful today, with majority of the crowd moving back to Union Square to protest that decision. And again, there are still plenty of people here bearing out the rain in Washington Square. For now, we are live in Greenwich Village. Jenna DeAngelis, CBS 2 News.
Jenna, thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this Friday night on a day that changed America. We're outside the Supreme Court after the landmark decision that overturned Roe v. Wade and ended a woman's constitutional right to an abortion. As you can see behind me, demonstrators both for and against the court's decision were quick to react here in Washington and across the country. More than 100 cities have already seen protests or plan to over the weekend. Also reacting, some of the nation's largest companies announcing they will cover employee travel expenses for abortions if they are not available where they live. Some of those companies include Nike, Uber, Alaska Airlines, Citigroup, Condé Nast, Disney, JP Morgan, Microsoft, Warner Brothers, and CBS's parent company, Paramount Global. And we also heard from presidents past and present. President Obama called the ruling devastating. Michelle Obama called it horrifying. And President Donald Trump said this gives the rights back to the states as it should have been long ago. We have a team of correspondents across the country tonight covering every angle of this story. We'll start tonight with our chief legal correspondent, CBS's Jan Crawford. Jan, this has been quite a remarkable day.
Well, Nora, Roe versus Wade is one of the few decisions most Americans know by name. And today, the Supreme Court said it's history.
When the crowd heard the court had overturned Roe versus Wade, there were cheers.
It took every single one of us, people across the political and ideological spectrums, to make this a reality.
A reality that for abortion rights supporters was hard to believe.
This is a nightmare. I'm 21 and I'm terrified.
In the 5-4 vote, the justices overturned the landmark 1973 ruling that guaranteed a woman's right to abortion, sending the issue back to the states to set their own policies. Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and the decision has had damaging consequences, wrote Justice Samuel Alito in a decision joined by 4 other conservatives. It is time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives. 26 states had asked the court to overturn Roe. 13 already have laws on the books that would ban abortion almost immediately. The others are poised to ban or greatly restrict it.
Today, the Supreme Court of the United States expressly took away a constitutional right from the American people.
President Biden blasted the decision.
It's a sad day for the court and for the country.
On Capitol Hill, Democratic lawmakers marched to the court, while Republicans said the ruling was overdue.
Hallelujah. I woke up this morning praying for this, and I never thought that it would happen.
Good evening. In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court today legalized abortions.
It took almost 50 years of annual marches for life, political muscle, and justices with a strong conservative legal ideology. Chief Justice John Roberts voted to uphold the 15-week Mississippi abortion ban, but refused to join the majority decision to overturn Roe or a subsequent 1992 opinion. With the court's newest justices, all nominated by former President Trump, there were 5 votes without him. Republican Susan Collins and Democrat Joe Manchin, who voted for Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, said they were duped, with Collins releasing a statement that they were both insistent on the importance of supporting long-standing precedents. But also a factor, the 2020 death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a champion of reproductive rights, gave Trump his 3rd nominee, who provided the key 5th vote. The 3 remaining liberals joined in a fiery dissent. Whatever the exact scope of the coming laws, one result of today's decision is certain: the curtailment of women's rights and of their status as free and equal citizens.
And Jan is with me here with more. So Justice Clarence Thomas wrote a separate opinion as well. It has some wondering, is same-sex marriage, is contraception next?
Well, I mean, that's right, because those are grounded in some of the same rights. But the court, in the majority opinion, said no. How could we be any more clear? This case is different. Abortion is different because it involves a human life. Those cases, the right to contraceptive, the right to same-sex marriage, are not being cast in doubt or threatened by this ruling, the court said. But
you see this turnout here? You ain't seen nothing yet. The hell with the Supreme Court. We will defy them.
AOC and Maxine Waters calling for people to get into the streets as left-wing radicals vow violence in the wake of today's Supreme Court ruling overturning Roe versus Wade. Security being beefed up around the Supreme Court and justices' homes, that while groups like Jane's Revenge are planning a night of rage and said it was open season on the pro-life movement. At least 40 pregnancy centers have been vandalized and activists have been allowed to illegally protest outside justices' homes, with one deranged man trying to assassinate Justice Brett Kavanaugh. And after weeks of silence, President Joe Biden finally calling for peaceful protests.
I call on everyone, no matter how deeply they care about this decision, to keep all protests peaceful. Peaceful, peaceful, peaceful. No intimidation. Violence is never acceptable. Threats and intimidation are not speech. We must stand against violence in any form, regardless of your rationale.
So, Dana, for 6 weeks, we've seen the White House encourage intimidation outside of the justices' homes. And now that Homeland Security is saying there may be real violence, he wants to step in and try and get ahead of it.
Well, and the Attorney General could have arrested any of those protesters at any time because it is against the law, the federal law, to protest outside a justice's home. They didn't do it. And now, actually, the Attorney General went to Kyiv, and I'm all for it. Like, go help support the Ukrainians, great. But on your way out, could you issue a statement or some guidance to the Department of Justice to actually do their jobs and enforce the law? And they didn't do that. So now there was no deterrence. So now Biden, 6 weeks later, is like, oh, and please be peaceful. But nobody's listening to him anyway at this point. Right. So if there is violence, immediately, they've got to put that out, or else it will just continue to simmer. And the other thing of when Maxine Waters says, screw the Supreme Court, we'll defy them. I mean, the way to do that would be to argue persuasively in the states and to be organized. And I think that they do have a fundamental problem, though, that it seems the left has long had this disconnect with getting a lot of money from a small group of people on this issue. Mm-hmm. And then the voters aren't necessarily there for them because if you look at any of the issues, any of the elections we've had recently, the primaries, what's your number one issue? Inflation, gas prices, crime, immigration, even education, missing a couple of others. And then it's like climate change and then abortion.
Right.
So this is obviously seismic. Who knows? But in November on election night, Martha and I could be sitting there saying, wow, abortion is the number one issue. I just kind of find that hard to believe.
So Jessica,
hard to imagine.
Jana makes the point that these lawmakers on Capitol Hill could say the states need to basically figure this out. Congress also could pass laws to do this. However, the last law they tried to pass was so outrageous and expanded Roe to the point of partial birth abortion that Democrats in Washington, who have a complete majority on everything, can't get it passed. So is the message here to get out in the streets and do what, since legislation seems to be off the table for Maxine Waters?
You need to be very specific when you tell anyone to go anywhere, because there are nutcases amongst all of us, right? We have mental health problems, and political extremism are a terrible mix, and the left and the right both have them. So I don't like any of this talk. I was very happy to see President Biden be so declarative and so clear about this at this particular moment. But I've gotten the